would like to thank everyone for coming to this VP presidential debate, and then for those of you who are staying for the other debates, I would like to thank you for coming to those too. I have on the board linked the questions for candidates. So if you are interested in asking questions to the candidates, we would love to hear your questions, and you can do so up there. If you are live streaming, and I don't know if you can see the QR code, thank you for live streaming with us. And you can follow the Instagram, the USG Instagram, and we have the questions for the candidates up there, so everyone can get their questions in. So we are going to start with opening statements, starting with Ramon and Chris for 10 minutes, so they have a 10-minute maximum on that. Ramon and Chris, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I want to take a moment for... Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. I first want to take a moment for thanking USG for setting up this debate, and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It is our pleasure to be sharing this stage with our current Vice President of USG and the Executive Director for External Affairs. I'd love to take a moment to read our candidate statement. Defend student interest, empower students, and demand transparency. We are Ramon Peters and Christopher Lama. Our pronouns are he, him, his. We are first-generation minority business majors with a commitment to UConn students and our campuses. Ramon is the president of the Business Connections Learning Community, the largest learning community at UConn, as well as the elected youth commissioner under 21 in the city of Bristol. In these roles, Ramon has gained the experience necessary to advocate for undergraduate students. I have experience with UConn's Finance Society, Business Connections Learning Community, and a certificate in biliteracy. With my bilingual and financial background, paired with Ramon's leadership skills, we are confident we will be successful in achieving our goals, which include defending student interests by advocating for programs, services, and policies aimed at benefiting students, working tirelessly to provide students with resources to empower and advocate for one another and for themselves. We will not allow infringements upon our population. And finally, tackling the issues of food insecurity, mental health, public safety, community, and the rising cost of our education. We are the future, we are the change, we are the University of Connecticut. It is unfortunate that this debate was actually scheduled the same day as the last home basketball game at Gamble. I know a lot of students couldn't attend. It is also unfortunate that USG did not promote this debate until the day of, as many students were unaware of this. It is a shame that USG posted the student body rolls only 2 days before the intent to run form was due. I've heard several times that the information is available, but how hard do we have to search? This causes disparity because those in USGs know what roles were available to them to run, while the general student population did not. To further display the lack of communication, there's no clear dialogue between USG and our regional campuses, which is disgraceful. These are just a portion of the issues we plan to address. One must ask themselves, why are these issues apparent? Is it due to a lack of accountability? Is it due to a lack of responsibility? Or is it due to a lack of care? We intend to find out. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Now, John and Peter, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you all for coming. Too often at events such as these, I think the focus is on what we as candidates are bringing to the table, what we've done, what we plan to do. Rarely ever do we actually get down to the why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we as students feel the need to help other students like yourself? Why do we devote so much time day in and day out to put on these programs and put in all the effort every single day to help students? Why do we do that? Over the past few weeks, Sean and I sat down with ourselves, we sat down with each other, we sat down with many of you to really get an answer to that question of why. For me, I'm someone who deeply values the reputation that comes with going to a university such as UConn. I truly love going to school here, truthfully. I actually work as a tour guide here on campus. And in that role, I'm responsible for selling this image of a perfect community. And then I come here to this role in this job of USG, and I see day in and day out of what makes this community not so perfect. And it's this cognitive dissonance that exists between the two roles that inspires me in my advocacy to work for one day so that those stories and those things I say on those tours aren't empty promises, but that's the real student experience that students are getting when they walk through the doors on the first day as a student here at UConn.
Hi everyone, I appreciate everyone being here. My name is Jonathan Hayden. John, as many of you know, I didn't even apply to UConn coming out of high school. I'm from Connecticut and was kind of done with the state. And I sought elsewhere, and so I ended up going to a university down in Washington, D.C. And after my freshman year, I had to have a lot of tough conversations with my family as kind of tuition costs rose at that school, and it became really inaccessible for my family. And so I decided to consider the possibility of coming back home, and I did. Within a year, I was 2 kilometers away from the Syrian border at a refugee camp interviewing children who had never even seen outside of the walls of their refugee camp, let alone had a single formal class that they've ever taken. And in that moment that UConn provided me, I saw firsthand what education means and what education is. And I think even looking around this auditorium, I see the faces of people who want to change the future. We all know the problems that are going to face our world, and we know that there are problems that we aren't going to be aware of that we're going to have to face. And so when I look across this room, I see so many of those faces that are going to impact that. What I also see is a lot of empty seats. And those empty seats could be filled by so many people who didn't get the opportunity to come here. So many people who might not have had the services and things provided to them that they so justly need. And it's a constant process of pushing that needle more and more and more for more and more students. But the reason why I'm up here is because of those empty seats. And I appreciate all the people that are in this room as well, because I know that you share that same mission. And so that's why I'm up here.
These are our whys, these are our stories that brought us to want to advocate for students such as you. And part of our campaign is wanting to hear those stories that make you you and brought you here today and brought you to UConn. And because those stories are really what's going to inspire our advocacy. And as long as John and I are here, there's not going to be a story that goes untold. And your stories are what going to inspire our mission here. Thank you.
So thank you. I'm just going to be loud because I'm a loud guy and I don't want to keep taking your mics when I don't have to. So hopefully the live stream can hear me. I'm sorry if you cannot. Can they hear me? Kind of?
Can you speak into the mic for people with hearing disabilities?
Yeah, that's fair.
Thank you.
Hello? Yes, okay, we're good. So now we're going to move into questions. So we're going to move into presidential questions because Ramon and Chris got the initial start. We're going to move to John and Peter for the first question. And the first question is, what is your vision for the organization and what are some of the immediate things you are planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
Yeah, so thank you, Jack, for being here as well. Our vision is to build on your stories and to provide the foundation for your stories. Everyone here has a different story, but in so many ways they're alike. And so we know USG, we know what USG can provide, and so we want to be the platform for you as students, to empower our own staff, but empower all students on that foundation that USG can provide. Many of the people in this room are aware of the monetary support that USG receives. And so it's really important that that gets reinvested back into students, not just from a monetary perspective, but also from an opportunity perspective. I mean, so Peter and I really view it as we want to be the foundation through our knowledge and our experience through this organization to just empower as many students, as many populations, as many communities, as many organizations as possible. So that's our vision for the role.
Okay.
Thank you both for doing that. And now Ramon and Chris have the floor. Sure thing. The question is, what is your vision for the organization, and what are some of the immediate things you are planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
Thank you, Chief Justice Romain. I appreciate the question. So, my vision of USG is one where students are in power and they're in the know of what is going on and what isn't going on. There shouldn't be these things hidden from us. We shouldn't have to search for information. We shouldn't have to look for information. It should be right in our face. Just like when they want a campaign, it's right in our face. We don't have to look anywhere for it. Furthermore, my vision is one of the students. I want to talk to each and every one of you, and I want to know what you want on your campus. And that's what I want to work to achieve. It doesn't really matter what I want because I'm here to serve you. And that's really the bottom line. But I'm sure Chris has something he would like to say as well.
Yeah. So I feel as if I was to be in control with this organization, I feel like every single one of these seats would be filled. It is a shame to see that like this whole row is empty, the whole middle is empty, and it's just like devastating to see more candidates right here to have to speak to like the whole students without them being here.
I actually want to expand on that too. It really is devastating that only 4 people came out to run for these 2 roles. I've seen in prior debates there were 3, 4, 5 different candidates, and I just can't fathom why this information wasn't pushed out sooner and why more students don't know about it. But I know if I was the president, that is something that I would first work to address, is that we need answers and we need information. So that's the answer to the question. Thank you, Chief Justice Romain. Here you go.
Thank you. So now the second question that was asked was, what do you believe the role of USG should be to the student population? And we're going to go with Ramon and Chris again for this one.
All right, I actually really like this question. Thank you again, Chief Justice Romain. So, I believe the role of USG is to advocate for students. We should be here to have every single one of your voices. And who are we to advocate to? We're to advocate to the administration. We're supposed to ask the tough questions that need answers. We're not supposed to be out here just hiding in our offices or not able to be reached. We need to be here for you. So our role is to serve you, as I said prior. And that is always going to be our role, and it always will be our role. We have no reason not to serve the student population because you make up UConn. Each and every one of you make up UConn, and each and every one of you are leaders who need to be empowered to make change in our campus and in our world because we are the future. Thank you. Do you have anything you want to say, Chris?
Thank you. John and Peter, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Mind repeating the question, Jack?
Sure. I'll just repeat it every time after this. What do you believe the role of USG should be to the student population?
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, so for John and I, the main role of USG and the role it's been in our time within the organization already has been to fill in those gaps where administration kind of falls short. And that's in actually providing those services and resources that students absolutely need day to day to really help them get through being a student here on campus. Things like providing free Plan B for our students, through expanding and making our Tier 2 funding system more accessible. Things like Husky Market and transitioning now into our Husky Harvest, on-campus food pantry for students in need. Expanding our period box and tampon time services that we offer through student services. Shout out those of you in the room today. Sydney, Benny over there as well. These are projects that students absolutely need, and they're absolutely great resources that administration is definitely falling short. And so instead of just rather filling in those gaps, it's kind of a 2-pronged approach. It's one, filling in the gaps that administration can't do, but then also calling on administration to do better going forward. A lot of the times USG kind of fits the bill for things that administration can be covering that students absolutely need, and that's a great short-term solution that John and I plan to continue doing, but it's also part of our long-term strategic plan to ensure that these aren't things that USG needs to be funding long-term. Administration can be putting up the money that they need to support students in ways that they're asking for.
And I'd just like to add one thing. I think I go out on a limb to say that USG isn't hiding in their offices. I look across the room, I look at senators who sit through 4-hour senates, just going through each and every person's thing that they're working on. I look across the room at, Mason and Sydney and Tay, who's just stepped into the role, people who honestly spend too much time working for students. And I have never entered a space at USG that hasn't been unaccepting of any opinion. And so I think it's really emboldening that, and I do agree that we need to market that to more students, but I think that it's not a problem of inaction. It's just a problem of letting students know, and that's not a reflection of our communications team. That's more of a reflection of our whole body really coming together and organizing that more fully.
Thank you. So with that,
So with that, we're going to move into our next question, which is, what policy or issue that you are running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it? I'm going to start with Peter and John.
Yes, I can start with that, and I'll hand over to John to add to his unique interests, because obviously we both bring a unique story and have our own unique interests in terms of what we want to advocate for as student leaders here on campus. For me, and over the past 2 years, an issue that I've worked most closely on has been addressing food insecurity here on campus. I've been hands-on from the start, and I do want to shout out my predecessor, Ethan Worsler, who did found our Husky Market program here on campus. I've worked firsthand with that for now 3 years, and we provided upwards of $782,000 in grocery store gift cards to students here on campus to make sure that they not only can go and afford groceries, but they can do so without the stigma of feeling like they have an issue, like food insecurity. And making sure they have the autonomy to go and pick out what that food even looks like for them. Because obviously this is a really specific issue these students are facing, and we want to provide them the means to both solve that issue and do so with the privacy and autonomy and the ability to just do that on their own as students. So that's an issue that I plan to continue addressing in my time here, and hopefully pushing for an actual on-campus food pantry. I know many of us in this room, we just came from a Senate meeting where we heard some really great news of establishing an on-campus food pantry here at UConn, and pushing for that and making sure and helping out in any way that UConn can support that. Also making sure that responsibility is on UConn, because we are students that are paying to go to this university, and they should support us.
Yes, and from my side, my story, I'm External Affairs Director here at USG, and so many of the things I want to expand here at USG are external. I think one thing, we see the new buildings come up around campus, and they're all, we were told they're alumni, donors, and we see the new hockey stadium, and we see the new student-athlete performance center, and it's frustrating to see that, but I also know that how many of us have interacted with alumni face-to-face on behalf of what we're passionate about. And so I think connecting students to alumni is something I'm really passionate about doing, so that one, we can move off USG from straight fee money, but also that we can push for things like the food pantry in the future that alumni I know want to support. So
Thank you. And then for Ramon and Chris, what policy or issue that you are running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it?
I think the policy that we're looking to start off strong is on empowering students. Without our students here, we can't change anything when we don't know what the problem is going to be. Our students are our voices. And it also starts with direct communication. If I was to be your vice president, I'll make sure that I will be at office hours when I'm told to be at office hours. And I think Ray has more things to finish off to say.
I mean, I think you said that wonderfully. Our goal is we want to empower students, because you guys are the leaders at the end of the day. You know what I mean? We can only do so much as president and vice president without your support. Furthermore, I agree with John's point about connecting students with alumni, and that's what I do as president of the BCLC. Actually, many of my BCLC students couldn't make it tonight because they're at a networking forum connecting with alumni, and I did that as a freshman too, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me. So what we want to do is get students the wonderful opportunities that they need, because many organizations are getting students wonderful opportunities, and it's unfortunate that many of the opportunities that I've seen through USG have been hindered, such as the food insecurity program. I'm food insecure, and I applied for a gift card in fall. And I got approved, but I never got emailed that I got approved. I had to reach out time and time again to ask whether or not I was going to get my gift card. And then I got an email back that said, sorry, we're not emailing anybody out. We're only giving gift cards to those who reach out for me. How is that acceptable? Are our food insecure students not important? Are our students not important? Because I believe they are important, and I believe we need to empower them so they can be successful and create change. Thank you.
Thank you. So for our next question, which will go to Ramon and Chris again, we have, what sets you apart from the other parties running for president and vice president?
So I believe what sets me apart from my candidates is that I have experience doing things like this. I'm the youth commissioner of the city of Bristol, which is a city of about 60,000 residents, which is about double the size of Yukon. I've made real change in that town by bringing the FLIP program, the Financial Literacy Innovation Program, to both of the high schools in my town. And on top of that, I've also done JRB programs, which are junior review programs. So let's say you get in a fight and you get arrested, you're not gonna go to prison. You're gonna go to a community service, you're gonna reflect upon what you did, you're gonna have a second opportunity to make change in this world. So it's not gonna be just like, oh, you're going to jail. And another thing that sets me apart is that I'm younger. I'm a sophomore, and I'm going into my junior year. I'm going to be here for 2 years. I'm not graduating next year, and I'm not going to just leave my students behind like that. I will be here to fight for you for 2 more years. And that's why I think we're set apart, is just that we're new, we're not experienced in USG, but we have experience in other places, and we have fresh ideas, fresh faces, and the drive to really push these things home. And I don't think I could say anything else. You got anything else to say, Chris? I think I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for the question, Chief Justice.
Thank you. And then just to reiterate the question, what sets you apart from the other candidates running for president and vice president?
Yes, Jack. I think it is also our experience. I think anybody who spent time in USGs know the hoops and loops you have to jump through to simply, get a purchase order through it, and that takes time. That takes semesters to get down. And so, while it's good to have fresh ideas, and I look forward to hearing those and those specifics, I think it's also a really powerful thing, and as many people know, that there is so much that from the outside you don't see on the inside. And so, even knowing the people that have been working on programs, carrying those forward because we're aware of them is something that I think really sets us apart, something that we want to push students to do. Because when you have a whole new organization and whole new people in all positions, all the projects that have been aiding students for years come to a halt. And so you have things like Husky Market put on hold, and things like period boxes, and even registering students to vote. Those things are all things that take long preparation and understanding. And so I think we bring that wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is it's a promise I ran on last time, it's a promise I'm running on this time, and my counterpart Mason Holland is in the room. It's that idea of momentum, and that's exactly what John and I are bringing to the table, is that we have the momentum to keep going. Everyone in this room understands that real change does take time. It's an anti-black racism course that Mason has been pushing for 4 years now. It takes time, and the work is still not done, and it takes people in the role who are continuing to commit themselves to that role day in and day out to really get it done, and that's what John and I are here to do.
Thank you both. And then the next question will be directed towards John and Peter again. What is your current campus involvement within and outside of USG?
I can start us off first, and that's part of kind of my story and my why as to why I'm here. My largest involvement outside of USG is as a tour guide on campus within the Office of Admissions here. It's a role that comes with a great deal of responsibility. It's a privilege, and it's a little bit troublesome, especially as someone who is a student advocate on campus, who feels the need to really speak for students and help them in that transition when they're coming here to UConn. It's a huge responsibility, and as I mentioned before, you're selling this idea of a perfect community, and at the end of the day, this community is really far from perfect a lot of the times, and I see that day in and day out when I return to my job here at USG, a role that I hold really deeply as well. So again, it's that cognitive dissonance that I'm seeing day in and day out of what I'm telling students when they're coming here to UConn, but then the student experience they actually see when they're here. And that's something that John and I really want to tackle, is making sure that those are the same thing. They shouldn't be told one thing and you experience something different as a student. It's that holistic support of a student from before they even are a UConn student to the time they're going to graduate. They're going to be holistically supported by John and I.
Yeah, and from my perspective, of course, I'm External Affairs Director at USG. I'm also part of a steering committee for Shaw for mental health when students first get on campus. Outside of UConn, I also, my brother started a nonprofit focused on food insecurity, both in Hartford, which is borders my hometown, as well as in Jamaica and Haiti, where they empower local farmers with hydroponic farming. And so I'm very involved in that, mostly from a grant writing perspective. Last year as well, I was Chief of Staff of Dago Labs, which is a research lab in the business school. I helped run 12 12 undergrad researchers, and that's where I was ended up traveling and doing research on refugees. And so I can hope to continue doing that research independently and also as I pursue a master's.
Thank you both. And then just to reiterate the question, what is your current campus involvement and how are you active, whether inside or outside of USG?
Thank you. Some experience I have currently in UConn right now is the Husky Case competition, where ideally I use critical thinking skills to solve day-to-day problems within the business, which is something that I will apply here at this position. I know there's like a lot of work that needs to be done, and like you said, there's a bunch of loopholes, but reading the Constitution, reading the bylaws, I'll keep myself informed and making sure that I know what this role has to take. I also have experience working with students with the ACEs office. I work day in and day out with students, helping them discover like who they are and like what major they want to go with the advisors. And I think Ray has things to finish off to say too.
So yeah, I've had quite the journey at UConn. So I came here in the summer, Student Support Services. That's where I started. I started working there as administrative assistant. In my first semester working there, I already got promoted to the business operations intern at the Center for Career Development, where I get a lot of inside information about what's going on at UConn and what's going down. I hear about the Board of Trustees meeting. I hear about a $300 fee bill increase that happened last year, and that's what actually inspired me to run for this role. Is no one in my political science class knew about this except me. So I was like, if I know this information, I can push it out to students. Besides that, I'm the current president of the Business Connections Learning Community, and outside of UConn, as I said, I'm the youth commissioner. I also get involved with Police Explorers and the UCTV Citizens Police Academy, and as being president in the Business Connections Learning Community, I really got a chance to build community, and I really got a chance to teach my students that they are leaders, and it's great to see what has happened from that. It honestly is. And yeah, that's where all my involvement lies. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I believe, did I ask you that question? Okay, so the next question, which will also go to Raymond and Chris, is what are some actual action steps you will take when you get into office?
So actual action steps that we want to take is, as I've said multiple times, is just push out information. There's no reason that this information should be pushed out so last minute and why people shouldn't know about it. There's no reason that every student on campus is scratching their head asking, why is this happening? Why wasn't I told about this? Did you hear about this? And people are like, no, I haven't. No, I haven't heard about this. And really, I just want to do what my statement says, is I want to defend student interest, I want to empower students to make decisions on their own, and I want to demand transparency. So my first step would be to confront President Rodenko on a lie that she told me at the protest at the Capitol. And my next step after that would be to ask, why is this information not pushed out sooner? And I want answers to these questions, and I don't want them in, like, they might take time, but there's a difference between taking time and a reasonable amount of time. And I want these answers in a reasonable amount of time. And if I don't get them, there needs to be a reason as to why I don't have them in a reasonable amount of time. And I won't stop pushing until I get those reasons. So those are my first step, is to ask the questions that need to be asked, learn what USG needs to be doing and why it's not doing it, and move forward on those plans. Because there's no reason for us to be lagging. There's no reason for us to be not doing what we need to be doing. And I want to thank you, Mason, for coming out here tonight, and I want to thank you for all the work you've done, because I know who you are, and I have known who you were from the moment that you came out on stage on my freshman year. And I appreciate you for being a face that people can point out and say, that's USG. But besides that, it falls short, and I'm sorry to say that, but that's what I want to do, is I want to promote it, because everybody should know who USG is.
Thank you. And then to Peter and John, what are some actual steps you will take when you get into office?
Yeah, so thank you. I think first I want to have a lot of conversations with the people currently in USG, whether that's Mason, whether that's our directors, whether that's senators, and all their constituents that they support, and really get a good sense of where they want this to go as well, because this is not just the president's organization. This is an organization that people have put hours upon hours upon hours of work, and it also represents the whole student body here in Storrs. I think for action steps as well, one thing I really want to do is a convention on funding. For people, it's a funny name, but for people who have to interact with our funding system, it is a pain. And so we need to work through that, whether that's club funding, whether that's USG's own processes internally. I've talked with Subog about their processes already, and they can get things purchased within a matter of hours, while we take 5 to 6 weeks at times. I mean, part of that is state laws, and so I think we really want to put together a policy agenda that we already have, and we want to publicly put out a policy agenda to share with state legislatures. That'll be ready to be produced soon. And so those are some of the action steps. And then I think we really want to have people in their roles as quickly as possible to start work on not just next year, but for the summer, and really start a good foundation for programs like expanding even our food pantry that's set to be announced in April, and doing the surveys that I know are going to be done by people, and working with the Office of Student Affairs to put out things like the Husky Swipes program. And so those are a couple of the things that I think we really want to tackle to start. And so I see my time.
Thank you both. So the next question is directed to John and Peter specifically. And this question is, what has been a challenge that you have worked with as incumbents, and how did you either struggle with that challenge, what did you learn from it, and how did you overcome that?
I think the biggest challenge that we've seen so far is what I said before, is that real change does take time, and a lot of times it's a lot of pushing, a lot of times you can feel discouraged at times, and we have to know that we really are just students, and we're really putting a lot of responsibility on our backs, and it just does take time, that change. That we have to understand as a leader, and for myself, coming in, I kind of knew that, but now, a year later, being able to see and really sit back and say that change really does take time, so I really am excited. I know John is too, to really come back into these roles and fill them just as well as we did this year, and if not better, and really just try to push forward. But that's definitely was a learning curve, is just the fact that change does take time, and you're pushing back.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add is change also takes people, and that's something I've really learned recently. More than anything, it's been really ingrained, is that to do really anything notable for students, you can sit down with an admin and talk about a solution, but to really implement that solution, you need so many people to, one, care, but then to put in the work. And that exists here at USG, but harnessing that is difficult at times. And I know, people who, not just in USG, but when you try to create change, it's hard. And I think the people are what matters. And so I think to create change, people matter as well.
Thank you so much. And then a question specifically to Ray and Chris is, why do you want to head an organization that you have been so vocally critical of? And what's your reason for wanting the position? Sure. So why do you want to head an organization that you've been so critical of? And yeah, that's essentially the question.
Thank you for the question. I think why we came in here to fight and advocate for this is, like I said before, all these seats are empty. There's a good amount of 100 students here when our student population is around 16,000. We just want to fight to empower students and demand answers to unanswered questions, really. And I'm going to pass it on.
I mean, I think this is a wonderful question, and my answer is why not? I see issues and I want to change them. You understand? That's what I did with the BCLC. Is I heard all the sophomores. Well, we were freshmen at that time. Everybody saying the BCLC sucks. I hate it here. So I said, you know what? I think I can make change. I'm going to become president, and that's where I think I can affect the most change. And that's what I did. I changed it. I changed the community, and people were happy. And the same thing I did with Bristol is I saw issues that were not being fulfilled. I saw issues that I wanted to change, so I took action and I changed them. And it's the same thing here with USG. I see issues and I don't understand why they are not being fixed, so I'm going to take action to fix them. And whether that means I need to meet with people, whether it means I need to reread rights or reread funding or whatever the issue is, I'm ready to dive head in. And that is why I'm critical. I'm critical of the organization because I want it to be better. And I think everyone can understand that. You know, if you want something to be better and you truly love something, you're gonna do your best to change it. And that's what I have to say is just why not? I see something, I wanna change it, I'm gonna do it. Thank you.
Thank you both. The next question is to Raymond and Chris, but it'll go to both candidates. Recently, there have been countless incidents of implicit biases against minority students, many of which go unreported. Firstly, how will you as president address the rise of such behaviors? And second, how will you advocate for minority students at large?
I think that is an imperative question to ask. And firstly, I am a minority student, so I have stake in these issues myself, and I have drive to change them because I have stake in these issues. Furthermore, it starts with the student population. We as students cannot allow this behavior to go on. And the administration has a part, but so do we. We need to hold our peers accountable. We need to hold the person next to us accountable and make sure that they're not being racist, you know, they're not being sexist, they're not being transphobic, that these jokes aren't funny, that it's not okay. And once you start doing that and you start putting your foot down and you start setting an example, other people are gonna follow. And that's what I did in the BCLC, is I started putting my foot down, I started leading by example, and people started following. And when people started following, the changes that we wanted started happening. And that's what each and every one of you need to do as leaders, is you need to put your foot down and start making the changes that you want to see. And that's what I would do as the president, as I would empower you to make the changes that you want to see, so you don't have to stand on the sidelines and watch racism, transphobia, sexual assault, all these issues occur. We can't have these people feel comfortable on our campus. This is our campus, and we need to bring the ballot to them. We can't allow them to bring the ballot to us. And that's what I think. Do you have anything to say, Chris? What's that?
Said the message very strong.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then it's going to be the same question to you, but to reiterate, recently there have been countless incidents of implicit biases against minority students, many of which go unreported. Firstly, how will you as president address the rise of such behaviors? And second, how will you advocate for minority students?
Yeah, I think first it's really important to say that there are problems here at UConn specifically about implicit bias and instances where that presents itself, and I think it's really important that we come out strongly against those actions. Peter and I, we're both guys, we're both white, and so we don't claim to represent everybody, and we can't represent everybody, but what we can do is listen to you all, and also let our actions speak for us. I think that's really important as well. From how we can support groups of minority, I think first is working with our CEO office and our future candidate, future elected official. I think we have a real problem on our hands that might hit us this summer with potentially affirmative action being put into trouble, and so developing a plan on that is going to be super important. Peter, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, so I think the best way to make sure that our organization is reflective of the people that ultimately elect us and that we're serving is just through our hiring and recruitment processes. Currently, as student body vice president, much of the work I do is in working with our hiring and our recruitment processes as an organization. And it's ensuring that when we're advertising a position, we're advertising that to on-campus organizations and in spaces that have those diverse audiences. It's about bringing in those voices. That's truly what I've learned in my experience thus far. Another thing John and I firmly believe in is in compensating our student leaders, whether that's monetarily or through academic credit, because we understand that not everybody on this campus can afford to work for free. And by compensating them, you get those more diverse pools of applicants, and you get those diverse people in those roles advocating for students here on campus.
Thank you both. So with that, I'm going to ask one more question to each of the candidates, and then we're going to move to closing statements. So my final question is going to be, there's so many good ones, let me see. What major change would you be enacting that would differ from the way that this current administration is running? And we'll go with John and Peter first.
Thank you, Jack. I want to first shout out the current administration, not just Mason and Peter, but also all the people within that administration. People have been working tirelessly, and so many great things have been accomplished this year, and it's outstanding to see. I think one thing, and this is something that we've worked on but haven't been able to put into place, is moving towards less reliance on fee money and pushing for things to be funded. And I referenced this earlier, but I think raising money outside of fee money is really important. The less we can put onto students, the better. And if we can still solve student issues while not having to put that cost onto students is even better. As we've seen through so many things this spring, is that tuition is a real issue, student fees are a real issue, housing is a real issue, food insecurity is a real issue, and so the more we can limit those costs, the better. And so that's something that we have plans in place to tackle and try to push towards a lot less reliance on fee money. So,
Thank you. And then just to reiterate the question, what major change would you be enacting that would differ from the way that this current administration is running?
Well, there's numerous major changes that I would love to implement. And the first one would be obviously pushing out information. Like we've said many times, we want more people at these dates. We want more people participating. Furthermore, another major change I would make is communicating with our other campuses. Our regional campuses are UConn too. UConn Stores is not the only UConn. And those major campuses need to feel welcome, and we need to all collaborate to elevate. And that's what I want to accomplish. Furthermore, I think that I love the Save UConn protest. I have some criticisms, but I love that happened, and I want to do more things like that. We should have more protests when we have a problem. We should have the resources, we do have the resources to put this into action, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be put into action. So those are my top 3 things that I would immediately want to change. Chris?
And to add on to that, one final thing is we want to push for a better community where all UConn campuses are connected with one another. We shouldn't clarify ourselves as I'm a Story student or I'm a Waterbury student. We should all be UConn students, and that's one thing that I feel is very important. And I feel some students around other campuses don't feel the way since they're classified as a Waterbury, Avery Point, Hartford. Shouldn't matter. We should all be UConn students and all have a voice for one another.
And to add on to that, that's one major thing that I know I will be passionate about and want to push, because that's what I was passionate about as president of the BCLC, is community. I think all of these issues really boil down to community. We need a strong UConn community. We need to all be one. We need to all be Huskies. We can't have animosity towards each other about things that we can't change. And we can't have animosity to each other about things that we can't address. So we all need to communicate. We all need to be one. We all need to move forward to take action and make change. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Now we're going to move into closing statements, which can be a maximum of 10 minutes. Exactly the same setup as your opening statements. We're going to have Ramon and Chris have the floor first again.
To close out, my good friend Chris introduced me in the beginning, but again, my name is Ramon Peters, but I go by Ray. And I just want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you, Chief Justice Romaine. Thank you, John. Thank you, Peter, for both being here. Thank you for the work you did in Syria. I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah, it's not funny. I think it's important work that you've done there, because these people need your help. And if you're willing to go out there and do it, that's good. And I'm happy to be here. So to close out, I'm president of the largest learning community on campus, the Business Connections Learning Community. My constituents tell me that the BCLC is much better than last year, and they all have excellent connections with each other, which is what I would hope to do if I was the president of USG, is make everybody have excellent connections with each other. Furthermore, I'm from the city of Bristol, which has a little over 60,000 residents, as I said before, double the size of UConn. So anyways, so yeah, I'm from the city of Bristol, 60,000 students, and in the city of Bristol, I'm an elected official under the Youth Commissioner under 21. My role in that position is to speak and advocate for youth under 21, which is essentially what I would be doing if I was president of USG. I would be speaking and advocating for the youth under 21. In this role, I've done numerous things. I've held this position down for about 3 years. In these 3 years, I've advocated for the youth of my city via JRB programs, as I explained before, Man Up and Woman Up programs, which help young men and young women get into their roles as the transition period, because that's when your hormones are acting up. And even though we're all older, our hormones still do act up and we still do have issues. So making sure that we're all ready to take on the world ahead of us is another thing I wanted to do. Furthermore, I've advocated for drug prevention programs. I know that there are drug problems on this campus, and I know that it's shameful to have to come forward and admit that, but I want us to be able to be here to help those people who have drug issues, who have substance abuse issues, so they can still be successful, because we're all young, bright adults. Furthermore, I've advocated for redoing my parks in my town. We redid the volleyball and basketball courts, and that was my idea. I really pushed for that because our courts were trash, and our volleyball courts were disgusting, and our youth should have a place to go after school and properly exercise, properly interact with each other, properly mingle, and I would advocate for those same things to be changed at UConn. I've also brought the FLIP program to my city, which is the Financial Innovation Learning Program. So what that program does is it takes underrepresented students and it teaches them the basics of financial literacy. It teaches them how to have a bank account, and furthermore, if you complete the whole program, you're eligible for a $300 stipend and a scholarship to UConn. I brought that to my town, to both high schools, Bristol Central and Bristol Eastern, and that's something I'm proud of. I want to make change, and I have real-world experience and real-world politics to make change. I can come make change at this campus because I've done it out in the real world. I've done it in the city of Bristol, which has 60,000 residents, and this is a much smaller campus. It's a much smaller place, so I know that I can affect change in such a smaller environment. Furthermore, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to come here and listen to us. If you have any questions, concerns, criticisms, or thoughts, please come up to me after the debate and talk to me. I'd love to have a conversation with each and every one of you. I want to know what's important to you. I want to know what issues you care about, and I want to know what you want changed. Because without you, the campus is nobody. And I think if we empower students to know that, that's when the real change will happen. Because the university has no power without its students. And as students, we need to take our power into our hands and march forward. So, also, if you want more information about our campaign, consider following our Instagram, ray.chris2023, or shooting us an email at rayprez.chrisvp2023. If you have the time, please stay for the rest of the debate so you can make an educated and informed decision on who you're voting for. Chris, do you have anything to say to close out? All right, I appreciate each and every single one of you.
Thank you both for coming. I definitely appreciate you running. I'm glad that we have a contested race. I'm always glad for contested races. Now, John and Peter, you have the floor for 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Jack, and thank you, Ray and Chris, as well. Running's hard. We feel that, and I know you guys do as well, and we've seen your efforts as well and how you care. I want to touch on one thing before I really get into my remarks about something that Ray and Chris mentioned about regionals. I'd like to point out that Peter and I are endorsed by the president from Stanford, Avery Point, and Hartford, Andy, Nahum, and Zach. I have worked with them as well, tirelessly throughout Save UConn, through UContact. I was on a call last week with them at like 7:30 in the morning while everyone was driving into their schools. And I'm getting dinner with them next week. And so I would like to point out that those relationships are there. And I'd like to shout them out as well because they do really great work. And on top of that, I'd also like to point out that as president, we unfortunately can't spend our money in support of those campuses. We don't represent those campuses. We represent strictly SOARs. And so what that means is that we have to be really creative in how we can support those campuses, and that's some things we've done. Even through the Save UConn campaign, they couldn't get to Hartford, many of those campuses, so we put them in contact with resources we know that would be willing to pay that for them. And that's one example of how we can work with them, but that takes a lot of effort and a lot of know-how of how you move through those spaces. Moving on from that, I appreciate everyone being here. There's a lot of students that care and a lot of students that want to make an impact in so many different places. And so that's why Peter and I ran, is because this is a university campus that students care. And I think that's evident at Save UConn last week, where students showed out, 700. I was approached by countless legislators like, wow, we've never seen this many students. And that was a massively successful campaign. The UConn's budget is not going to be the same way it was at the same time. And so we really want to push out your stories. We've told you our stories, and we can't wait to hear yours. So I thank everyone for being here. I look forward to hearing the rest of the candidates, and I hope you all stay and enjoy as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. So we're going to begin with opening statements. Each candidate has 5 minutes allotted to speak, and we have a randomized order to determine who speaks first. So just to reiterate, this means you have 30 seconds left. This means your time is up. So Tainaja, you're up first. You may begin when ready.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tainaja Pullen. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a sophomore in political science and individualized Black anthropology double major. So a little about myself. I was born in Florida, but I grew up here in Connecticut. I attended Wilcox Technical High School and went through the health tech program because I always wanted to help people. I knew that in my career, at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that I was helping people. I originally wanted to do something in the medical field, but I felt that in my gut that being a civil rights lawyer was the path to help people in the way that I wanted. So a little bit about my experience here at UConn. Since coming to UConn, I've been pretty heavily involved. I've pioneered BSOL, which is UConn's residential Black women learning community. I chartered the UConn chapter of the Black Female Development Circle, as well as founded the Black UConn Collective, both organizations with goals to help foster community and unite Black students here.
Thank you, Tainaja. Okay, Angela, you may begin when ready.
Hi everyone, my name is Angelo Montez. My pronouns are he, him, his, or they, them, theirs. I'm currently serving as a residential senator for the Northwest Mailroom District. I'm a Latinx first-gen student and openly bisexual. I want to start off by briefly mentioning that English is my second language, so if I misspeak at any point in this debate, I would like to apologize in advance, as it is never my intention to offend anyone, so if you would be patient with me and offer me grace, I'd appreciate it. I grew up in a Spanish-speaking household since my family is from Mexico. Due to this, I was able to experience the richness of Mexican culture and understand from a young age the importance of diversity. If elected as Chief Diversity Officer, my plan is to expand the tenets of diversity within USG. What I've noticed is that sometimes people, when they think of diversity, they think of race. I do believe that diversity of race is important, but I also believe that diversity encompasses so much more. If elected, I plan to expand my recruitment process and focus on all aspects of diversity. Diversity of race, skin color, minds, also known as neurodiversity, gender, orientation, and sexual preference. I want to connect to underrepresented groups here at UConn and make them feel welcomed. I want to encourage them to join USG and make a difference. As I mentioned before, I'm Mexican, bisexual, and identify as he, him, his, and they, them, theirs. These are my identities. It is important to understand the intersectionality of one's identity and how we all fall into different categories. We are made up of different identities that affect our everyday lives positively or negatively. My experiences as a past president and a Gender and Sexuality Alliance Club president, along with my participation in a women's empowerment group, along with my background, will guide me to uphold these responsibilities. I would like to share a short story of someone who works within USG. Winterloo I'm so sorry, Winter. I am so sorry. A senior psychology major with an Africana Studies minor. Her pronouns are she, her, hers, and is currently working as an office assistant at the AACC. She's an MCD senator as well as the president of UConn CIS. She says, a lot of the time we forget how deep the issue of intersectionality is within our society and within our campus. There are a lot of people of color that experience the negatives relative to the intersectionality that is present within their identities. I've had a hard time trying to figure out what it means to be a low-income, first-generation immigrant, disabled Black woman at a PWI, and how these identities interact and affect each other. I hope that talking and addressing this issue within our campus will make it easier for a lot of students of color to be comfortable and get the resources they need. Winta's story is one of many. This is why it is so important to elect someone to this position who is dedicated to inclusive and expansive use of diversity. We should be advocating to the 18,500 plus undergraduate students on the STORES campus alone, and we need to recruit leaders that will provide students with the services they deserve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Angelo. So we're going to move into, oh, sorry. We're going to move into questions. I received a list of pre-submitted questions from the student body, so I'll ask most candidates to answer the questions unless directly addressed to one of you. Angelo, if you would answer the question first. So, what is your vision for the CDO office, and what are some of the immediate things you're planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
I plan on communicating to the student body. I think it's extremely important that we advocate and understand what each role is, because a problem that we face a lot is that students don't know what the role is. They think that it is a more programmatic role, and that they think that it is for diversity within UConn itself, rather than to be working within USG. So a lot of the times we do have issues within communication within our organization, so I want to push for more communication for our student body.
I'll repeat the question for Tainaja. What is your vision for the CDO office, and what are some of the immediate things you're planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
Some things I have planned for the CDO office, definitely most urgently, is preparing and cultivating a deeper relationship with the culture centers here on campus. The cultural centers affect groups of students, marginalized students, first-handedly. These are where these people go. This is their safe space. So making sure that they feel support from USG, whether that be events or funding or programming, anything, making sure that we have a good relationship with the cultural centers. I currently do serve as the interim chief diversity officer. As a couple programs I've been planning so far is a Women's History Month banquet by the name of Shades of Womanhood. It's going to be an award ceremony, and we're just going to recognize, you know, the activists here on campus, thank them for what they do, have a nice dinner. Something else I've been working on is working with the Rainbow Center to make sure that there's gender inclusive and gender neutral housing, making sure they get funding, helping them with programming, making sure they have the proper people in place to help the facility run. And yeah, that's just a couple things I plan on doing here. And also just working with other members in USG, because it is very large and everyone has an important role. So working with the environmental justice coordinator, and yeah.
Thank you. What policy or issue that you're running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it?
I don't really have a policy in mind, but I do have a background of what I actually want to achieve within making a policy, is to establish something for neurodivergent and neurodiverse people to feel comfortable within our organization. I think it is a big issue within our campus and our organization, is that we make it inclusive to everyone. I know I'm saying neurodivergent right now, but in general, it needs to be more open to people. They need to understand how it works and how we can actually accomplish filling in the empty seats that we have.
Thank you. I'll repeat the question. What policy or issue that you're running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it?
A policy that is definitely super important to me. I'm gonna start with a little background. So after I got my acceptance letter for UConn, I did some research, which I'm sure most of us did, and I went on TikTok. And to my surprise, it was just a whole bunch of black thumbnails, and each was a story about a girl that UConn failed, having the sexual assault happen in the first place and not having any proper disciplinary actions being taken after. So that's definitely something I'm super passionate about. A way I'd like to resolve this is proper disciplinary actions, making sure that they have proper support after. Although there was a task force that was made, a lot of students don't know about it, or they aren't able to, you know, benefit from the resources that's put in place for them. Another issue is UConn PD's wild budget. $8 million is a little much, especially for students who I'm sure in this room are all up to their necks in student loan debt. We have a police department who gets $18 million and has a poor sexual assault response. So yes, those two things.
Thank you. What sets you apart from the other candidate running for a chief diversity officer?
Honestly, I don't really like to speak on this because me and Tay are like this. Love Tay so much. But just to point out some things that I have advocated for, my mother is a community organizer for Connecticut Worker Center. I've helped her for years establishing and connecting with domestic workers that don't have documentation within the United States and providing them with the resources they need to be able to protect themselves and understand their rights. So overall, I think big communication on my end. I think I'd like to communicate to the students and understand what they need.
Thank you. And what sets you apart from the other candidate running for Chief Diversity Officer?
Like Angela mentioned, we're besties, so this is just me talking about, what sets me apart. I believe my network sets me apart. Throughout my advocacy work on campus, I've met with a multitude of people, ranging from different demographics and backgrounds that are very beneficial to programs that I do with my club, or letting them know, hey, is this okay to post? Should we add something to this? So I feel like I have an extensive network here on campus that I think will be beneficial to me in this role.
Thank you. What do you believe the role of USG should be for the student population?
Is it her turn? Because you asked me before.
Oh, I'm just gonna keep going.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. Like I said, advocacy, we need to reach out to the student body. I think it is, as Chief Diversity Officer is mostly recruitment, in my opinion. It is mostly understanding who needs to be within USG, understanding where diversity lacks. So I think at the end of the day, when serving as Chief Diversity Officer, you need to focus on who you can recruit and who can be good leaders within our community. We have a bunch of different groups within UConn and all those things. So I really think advocacy and communicating with the student body is a big portion of what needs to be done.
Thank you. And I'll repeat the question. What do you believe the role of USG should be for the student population?
I believe that USG's role for the student population is to, maintain and cultivate the diversity here, as well as advocate on their behalf. That is what we're here for, whether it be them, wanting to transfer their Husky points, needing period products. USG is here to serve on behalf of the students. So through things like the Husky-thon, Husky Market, the period box, that's what I believe that USG is here to serve students for.
Thank you. How do you plan to work with the other offices within USG?
Already I feel like everyone in USG knows each other a lot. We all are connected one way or another. I don't really think it's difficult to connect or work with them because we already work so well with each other and how everyone is in their roles right now. I really appreciate the communication and the advocacy that our senators are doing, our Gov board. It's just a matter of communicating and understanding.
I'll repeat the question. How do you plan on working with the other offices within USG?
I plan on working with the other offices in USG pretty extensively. We do have senators that represent culture centers, ex officios, or other organizations like the Non-Panhellenic Greek Council. So working closely with them to see what they need from USG and how my office can best suit them. The office, the financial workers work there, Comptroller's there, the executive board is down the hall. Most of the people that work in the SOC office are also involved in USG. So I plan on working with them extensively. For example, the environmental justice coordinator, with making sure that we're being environmentally conscious here on campus.
Thank you. And the last question is, what are some actual action steps you will take when you get into office?
So recruitment, like I said, it's a big part of the Chief Diversity Officer's role. It is important that we find students that are willing to advocate for the students. Something that USG has always been about is for the students, by the students, and I think we need to emphasize this and understand how we can better serve our students.
And what are some actual action steps you will take when you get into office?
Some actual action steps I plan on doing once I'm in the office is continuing, the strengthening of the culture centers, making sure the students in those places feel heard. These are our marginalized communities that otherwise feel overlooked, so making sure that they feel like their needs are being met, as well as recruiting and maintaining the diversity in USG to cultivate a safe space. UConn is a PWI, but that doesn't mean that there should be no people of color in USG. In order for us to be properly represented, we need to make sure that we're in these spaces making choices on our constituents' behalf.
Thank you. Now we'll move into closing statements. Each candidate has 5 minutes to speak, and we will keep the same order as opening statements. So, Tainaja, you may go first.
If elected as your Chief Diversity Officer, I will continue to ensure that the needs of marginalized communities here are not only met, but sustained, as well as strengthening the Office of Diversity's relationship with the culture centers to ensure that USG is best supporting its students. When I began my undergraduate career, I was a budding activist, and I know firsthand how difficult advocacy work is without support. That's why I will remain committed to recruiting and finding people who want to be in this space.
Thank you. Angela, you may begin when ready.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who has gotten me to this point and helped me achieve what I had to achieve. My friends who helped spread the word about my campaign, Winta for sharing her story. It was a lovely story. I really appreciate it. My fellow candidate for Chief Diversity Officer, Tay, for always being so sweet and always advocating for the students. I want to really thank you for everything that you've done. So most importantly, I want to thank everyone that tuned in to this debate. It is extremely important that we connect with you and understand what you need. To recap my opening statement, I want to mention again that diversity is multidimensional. It encompasses race, sexuality, neurotypical and neurodivergent, gendered, non-binary students, and so much more. If elected as Chief Diversity Officer, I will ensure the safety and comfort of anyone that wishes to join USG. It is important that we elect someone who can execute these responsibilities to ensure we recruit leaders that will provide the students with services that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. So this concludes our debate for the USG Chief Diversity Officer position, and thank you both for your interest in this role and commitment to the student body.
Thank you again for our two Chief Diversity Officer candidates, and good luck to both of you. And I would, because the Comptroller debates are so short, I think we're going to just invite up Ben and Charisma, if you are here. See Ben. There's Charisma. Good enough. Glad both of you are here. It would be. Yeah, old-fashioned then. So. Ben, you mind if I share my screen?
I mean, do we have another option?
No.
So then, sure, that's fine.
The other option is you say, with each other. We'll do it like this. We'll do it as we've been doing it. So with this, I would like to thank both of the candidates for coming tonight, and I would like to have a 5-minute opening statement again, and again, I forgot my gavel, so I'm going to grab that. But I will have a 5-minute opening statement, and Ben got the random number generator, so Ben will go first on this statement. So Ben, whenever you're ready, you have the floor.
Thanks, Jack. Hi, Huskies. I'm Ben Kilty. I'm a junior. I'm a music and math double major, and I've been honored to serve you over the last year as USG's Comptroller. Now, I want to start by introducing you all to the role just a little bit, because this is, I think, the role that is least well known out of the 4 roles that you will be voting for on the ballot. Unlike all the other roles here tonight, the Comptroller's role is not primarily an advocacy-focused role. It's more like a support role. It's a treasurer. So there's a lot of financial policy, a lot of financial procedure, a whole lot of deadlines, and a whole lot of, reading the law and making sure that we can get those checks out on time, and we can make sure that everyone gets the funding that they need. Most of my days are spent talking with clubs and vendors to ensure that packages come in and people show up where they need to. And I'm known throughout USG, I think, as the guy who gets stuff done. With that said, the biggest part of my job, and I think the most important, is club funding. When I entered this role last April, I inherited a really complex and confusing system. There were a lot of clubs who didn't know what they needed to do in order to get the USG funding that they wanted and that they deserved. I worked over the summer with the funding supervisors to build a brand new Tier 2 funding system from the ground up. And at every step of the way, I have worked to cut down on delays, be it in the review steps, in approval, or in the purchasing. The upshot of that is that we have been more flexible this year on funding deadlines than any USG ever before. Just so far in this semester alone, I have issued more waivers for the 6-week funding deadline than in the past 2 years of USG combined. We're working so hard that if we continue at this pace over the summer, I plan on lowering that 6-week deadline down to 4 or 5 weeks for some funding requests. And every funding change, as well as USG budget, has multiple hearings, town halls, and revisions to ensure that your voice and the voice of every interested student is heard and reflected in our spending. But in addition, my role and my experience, looking over budget sheets all day, has given me a really interesting perspective and a really interesting way of being able to look at UConn's budget. Tay, where's Tay? Tay, I'm so glad that you mentioned the cultural centers, because I was so happy to be on a team over this fall that was able to secure an additional $62,000 in permanent funding for the cultural centers. And I plan on going back for more next year. I'm currently working with the folks, again, Tay, I'm glad you mentioned, from Gender Inclusive Housing to get more resources and to allow them to become a fully fledged cultural center. In addition, my role on the committee that oversees student fees allowed me to secure more funding this year for the UConn Marching Band and the One Card office, ensuring that students get the recreation and the card access that they need, all while keeping costs low for UConn students. Today, I spoke with the Board of Trustees about transparency, because I think that's really important. The UConn budget, and also in past years the USG budget, has been so hard for students to figure out that it's been nearly impossible to do effective advocacy. I spoke with the board today about getting students the information that they need, and I plan on following up in a meeting with UConn CFO next week. But I've also worked hard to support USG initiatives on food insecurity, free printing, and free menstrual products to make sure that all students have the resources that they need to be successful. And I want to shout out Sydney and Benny right there for being such amazing allies in that work. And I do want to address that USG and I are not always perfect. We're never going to be. There's always still work to do, which is why this coming year, I plan to work with UConn Purchasing to further decrease deadlines so that we can get more stuff out to clubs faster, to create a funding advisory board made up of student organization treasurers so that can recommend change to policy and procedures, and to create more transparency in the USG budget. I look forward to showing you tonight why I'm the best and most qualified candidate for this role, and I'm confident I can earn your vote. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Charisma, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Charisma Farrington, and I am currently a sophomore in psychology on the pre-law track. I am also a first-generation student, African American, Cape Verdean, and involved in many advocacy groups regarding these issues. During my time here at the university, I've joined the UConn Marching Band, the University of Connecticut Voices of Freedom. During my time in these organizations, I have been elected as historian for Marching Band and social coordinator for Voices of Freedom. Currently, I am a multicultural diverse senator in the undergraduate student government. My goal if elected as comptroller is to be a voice for students when it comes to money USG has. I understand that Ben says it's not really an advocacy thing, but I strongly disagree with that because if elected, I will be the voice of what our funding goes to. Before joining the undergraduate student government, I barely knew we had a comptroller and that they had office hours. I would make myself available to the student body and honestly listen to them and the entire USG funding staff. If elected, I think I would do things different than the typical person in the comptroller office. I would truly listen to each and every person in this university because if anyone has more knowledge, it would be them. I plan to take initiative when things do not seem right or when the student body has a concern, when not only it comes to funding, but other areas too. I'm so passionate about so many different areas of advocacy. Some of my biggest topics of interest are equal rights, the cultural centers, tuition increasing, and life after the foster care system. Being in an underrepresented group on campus, such as the Voices of Freedom, has truly opened my eyes this year, especially being in a predominantly white institution. During my time in high school, I've had access to two very different types of education. The education where every single thing was funded by the states, but also the education where we could barely afford textbooks. Due to this, I have a wide background on what it is like to not have access and funds all the time. I feel like knowing this could really help and shape a new and improved undergrad student government comptroller. Looking at the budget, a lot of the funds go to the big groups everyone thinks of and knows, but there are a lot of smaller groups and projects who do not get the same opportunity. And I truly know this is not USG's fault, but there is always room for change, and if elected, I would truly advocate for the change because there is always room for change. Being in USG has been one of the most powerful organizations I have been involved in. It is such a large group of the student body wanting to make changes, but that does not mean there is no room for change and fresh blood. When I look at the university, I see all the good, but I also see the things that need to be changed that must be changed. My biggest hope is to be able to advocate and change some of the funding policies that are in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charisma. And with that, I'm going to go into the first question, which is, what policy or issue that you're running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it? We're going to start with Charisma. You have 2 minutes.
I think the thing that is most important for me is the underrepresented groups, such as the cultural centers and honestly, the choir I am in currently, because we had to jump through a lot of hoops and things, especially inside the cultural centers and like my group I'm in to even get funding. I truly believe that there shouldn't be that many like hoops and things to jump through for underrepresented groups to get funding, and I want to help advocate and change those policies.
Thank you. With that, Ben, I'm just going to reiterate the question for you. What policy or issue that you are running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it? You have 2 minutes.
Almost didn't give me the mic there. It's got to be the clubs. 55% of USG's budget goes to funding student organizations, and over 150 unique student organizations last year received funding. I'm glad, Charisma, that you mentioned the Voices of Freedom. I was actually able to work with the president and treasurer of the Voices of Freedom this year in order to make sure that all their funding requests were fully policy compliant and get them funded. I've worked nights and weekends to make sure that student organizations are getting the funding that they need. Again, I would target I think the biggest and the easiest way to make change is to change that deadline. 6 weeks, I understand, is a long time to know in advance exactly what you're going to buy and exactly what you're going to do. We face this issue internally with USG as well as with student organizations every day. And I think that I have the knowledge as well as the connections with UConn's purchasing department to continue to bring those timelines down to the point where I am comfortable saying that we will be able to fund travel in 4 weeks next fall. I think that increasing the availability of funding to more and more diverse student associations and student organizations is always a good initiative, and I've worked hard to make that happen over the last year, and I look forward to continuing to make it happen next year.
Thank you. So we're going to proceed to our next question, which is, what experience do you have in financial roles? Ben, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Well, it'll be this one, right? I have served for the last year as the controller of our student government. That has involved a lot of learning of university systems, all of the ways in which we buy things, the difference between a requisition and a purchase order, are not things that they teach you when you step into this role and are things that you're expected to learn by yourself. I spent the first 3 or 4 months of my role just figuring out how to buy stuff. That means that I am armed this year to go in and be able to make change on day one in a way that I was not last year. I'm so looking forward to making these processes more accessible to students through changes to the funding policies, additional training, as well as internally making sure that we are reaching out to students about every purchase that USG makes, that other 45% of the budget. I really think that we can do some good work and that my experience and my connections with UConn's purchasing department can go a long way to making sure that students and student organizations are getting the funding and the materials that they need to be the most successful.
Thank you, Ben. So Charisma, same question to you, just to reiterate, what experience do you have in financial roles?
During this past year, I have taken on a co-administration job in the UConn Marching Band office, and I have helped fund a lot of different things within the aspect of the marching band. I've had access to our budget and what we spend on a daily basis and what we can not spend and what we should be spending it on. I have also had a lot of experience when it comes to planning trips for the marching band, getting buses, getting food, and paying the university and how we're going to go about that. I also have had experience with different payment plans through the marching band too, and working a lot with inside the budget from that.
Thank you, Charisma. And then the next question, also going to Charisma, is what sets you apart from the other parties running for Comptroller?
I think the thing that sets me apart most is honestly just my diverse background in not having the funds and the access to everything that every other person has had. I think that is very eye-opening for some people, and I think that will help me because I understand what it is like to be an underrepresented group on campus, or I understand what it's like to be an organization or a club that does not get the fundings, and that can really help me to change some of the policies that are in place because, I mean, our comptroller this year, he does a phenomenal job, but there is still always room for change, especially when the times we are in now are calling for change, we need to change with those times.
Thank you, Charisma. With that, Ben, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Charisma, for bringing up the importance of bringing underrepresented and marginalized people into every single conversation. I am so happy to have built a staff that is half women and half non-white, reflective of the UConn population as a whole, because no one person can ever possibly represent the entire student body, and no one person can ever have all the tools that it needs to make change. With that said, I think that my record speaks for itself. My record in getting additional funding for our cultural centers, for our marching band, who I see right here, and for some of our most marginalized and underrepresented communities, like the gender-inclusive housing community that I'm currently working with to receive more funding. I think that my record on working with all student organizations, including our cultural organizations, to receive more funding when, very often our policies weren't necessarily built for these cultural organizations. A couple weeks ago, I spent 4 hours on a Saturday working with Sanskriti and the Indian Students Association because they had a high priority funding appeal that they needed submitted that day. We were able to get them their funding, and it was a great event. I think that my record on getting funding out to all students, including those in our most vulnerable communities, really does speak for itself, and I think that's what sets me apart, Jack. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ben. My next question is to Ben specifically. Because you are the incumbent, what was the challenge that you faced during your role this year, and how did you overcome it?
It's a really good question. And I want to go back to these university systems. They were built for people who spend 5, 10, 15 years doing the same or a similar job in an office. They were not built for a student to understand them in a day. Typically, when a full-time staff member is hired, it takes their first 2 or 3 months just to learn how to put in a purchase. And that's not something that USG and its students and the clubs it supports could possibly wait on. And you know, there really is no substitute for emailing every single person who is listed on a website asking for help, right? I think that the biggest thing that I learned this year is not just that it's okay, but it is necessary to ask for help from those who are more knowledgeable than you about an issue. And I'm so happy to say that I feel like I've mastered a lot of these systems and have been able to use that mastery to, you know, Sydney and Benny can tell you, working on the period box this year, using those university systems in order to find vendors, find quotes, and find the resources that students need. So happy that we've been able to do that.
Thank you, Ben. And then this is a question to Charisma specifically because you are the challenger. What do you actually seek to change or do better during your time as comptroller?
I think during my time as comptroller, if elected, I want to see, I think the 6-week funding period is also a lot. My group struggles with that quite a bit on campus, and I think that needs to be changed quite a bit, to be honest. I also think all the hoops that continuous students are jumping through just to get funding needs to change. I also just think that everything, like honestly, quite a bit needs to change within funding, because why was there even an option to cut funding from the cultural centers when the funding for comptroller is so big? I think, why is the funding for comptroller such a large funding? Why is the funding for CDO so big, or the funding for undergrad student like trustees so big, when there are clubs and cultural centers and underrepresented groups on campus that need this funding at the end of the day?
Thank you, Charisma. With that, we're going to move into our next question, which is, applying for funding is not an easy process and many requests are denied. What steps would you take to solve that problem and to let students get their own money? Charisma's first.
I think that's a really hard question to tackle right now, especially because the system is, honestly, it is foreign to me, as I've never had to process funding on my own, because I've never worked in the funding staff for USG. But I think that is a question that I would want to ask the funding staff as a staff, and I would want to ask the student body and ask them what would be better for them and what would make this process a lot easier for them. I think, like, also if I'm elected, like, I would want to get, like, Ben's input on what had worked and what had not worked in the past and everything, because I don't want there to be a hiatus and for funding to stop. I want funding to continue if elected, but I want it to continue in a more positive way.
Thank you, Charisma. Just to reiterate the question, how we make sure that students get to use their own money in funding processes?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a complicated and big question that is impossible to fully answer in 2 minutes, right? What I will say is the changes that we've already made, starting with highlighting those. If you look at the funding system last year, the instructions were upload a PDF with all documentation that USG needs, period. That was it, right? This year we have built out a huge, complicated, you would not believe how long it took, form that walks students through all of the documentation USG needs at every step. What we need for travel, what we need for a speaker, what we need for event reservations. I think, right, and we built this new system from scratch this year. Of course there were kinks to work out. The funding system is not foreign to me. In fact, I have spent so much time in it that I often find myself wondering why it's so difficult. And so that's why I think it's so important to bring in those student organizations who aren't working in the funding system every day, but only work in it when they need funds, and are only working in it a couple times a year at most, right? That's why I want to go back to my plan to create a funding advisory board made up entirely of student organization presidents and treasurers. The whole point of this is for them to be able to bring feedback to me and to the rest of USG. I'm so proud of the relationship that I have built this year with the funding staff, which has allowed us to work together to create these systems and solicit this feedback. And I know that moving forward, we can continue to do this in a better and more productive way.
Thank you, Ben. So this next question is kind of complicated. So, oh yes, as the comptroller of USG, what is your plan for the residual fund balance and our current student fee? And would you consider requesting a fee increase from SASVAC to help stabilize the budget in the light of inflationary increases and heightened USG spending in coming fiscal years. So just for reference, it's asking about a fee increase.
Sydney and Benny are laughing. Very complicated issue. It's one without an easy answer, right? When I was originally discussing our fee package for this year, a fee increase was on the table. And that was something that we very quickly took off the table after speaking with students and realizing that at that time, their pockets could not handle a fee increase. I am so proud to have been able to move around money and cut spending so that we don't have to request a fee increase next year. That's going to have to be a conversation again. And I don't think it's fair to ask any comptroller candidate what they think right now about what our funding and financial situation will be in a year. I think a fee increase should be something to consider only if the students think it's a good idea, right? When I made our financial plan for this next year, one of the key points was a year of listening, a year of reaching out to students about our budget, showing them what we spend their money on, and asking them if they think it's appropriate for us to get more of it. The answer might be no, and I already have a plan for cutting USG spending, which will unfortunately have to include cutting Tier 2 funding, right? These are always trade-offs that we have to do. USG in the next 3 years will either have to collect more money from students or cut the amount of money we give back to clubs. That's an unfortunate reality, and it's not one that I think that I, or Charisma, or any one person should ever decide alone. I think that we need to talk to the students, decide whether they think it's worth it, and go from there.
Thank you, Ben. Charisma, same question to you. I'm just going to simplify it to, would you consider requesting a fee increase?
I think being a student who comes from someone that pays their tuition themselves fully, I personally would not consider a fee increase unless the student body had come to me and told me that there was a fee increase. And even then, that would take a lot more discussion than just being like, we're going to put a fee increase in today. I think that would take me going out there or me opening my office hours that I would have and try to talk to majority of the student body and be like, this is what's being proposed. Do you agree or do you disagree? And how can we change it? I don't think a fee increase is the answer at this point. I honestly believe at this point, defunding some of the USG funding that we have is the answer instead of increasing the fee.
Thank you, Charisma. With that, we're going to move into closing statements. So Ben gets to go first. Ben, you have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Jack. First of all, I want to thank Jack for moderating. Charisma, thank you so much for being here. I truly believe that dissent, disagreement, and quite frankly, sometimes argument are what strengthens me as a candidate and USG as an organization. I also want to thank everyone in this audience for taking the time out of your evening. I know it is, 9:20-ish right now? I want to thank you all for coming out here and listening to the both of us speak. With that said, I want to make a pledge to all of you, which is that regardless of what you think about me, my priorities, the budgets I write, the funding policies I write, I am accessible and open and transparent with you. I hold 3 office hours a week. I am always available via email, as some of these USG people can tell you. I'm perhaps too available via email. And on funding, right? I work, as I said, I have worked countless nights and weekends to make sure that students are getting the information and the money that they need. Ultimately, folks, I think that my record and my experience speak for itself. My ability to obtain both more funding and more deadline waivers for clubs than we have ever done in the past in USG, as well as my ability to fight for different allocations of resources at this university, including additional funding for the cultural centers, including additional funding for the marching band, and including overall getting more information about UConn's budget out to students. Because it's not me who should be deciding how your money gets spent. It's you. Getting you the information that you need in order to effectively self-advocate is has been and will continue to be my priority. Once again, I think that my record speaks for myself. Sorry, my record speaks for itself. The relationships that I have built that allow me to get this information about the UConn budget, as well as the knowledge that I have built that allows me to interpret all of this financial information and share it with you all. I think that next year, we can make some really great strides towards ensuring that funding, both from USG and from UConn, is so much more easy to understand and so much more accessible for the average student. That's my goal, and I hope that I've earned your vote here tonight.
Thank you, Ben. I would like to thank you for running for Comptroller. Charisma, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight, especially after a long day of classes. It truly means a lot to every single candidate here. Thank you, Jack and Kamar, for moderating, and thank you, Ben, for being a good competition. Us as students have a very important choice to make this election. We have seen Ben in office, and can we as students who are not in USG say we have seen a change? He keeps mentioning the marching band, but we are fighting for funding every single day. We do not see the work of him, and neither do the kids in the School of Fine Arts. We are stronger together, we will embrace the diversity of our university, and we can make the changes together. But that starts with your vote. Every single one of you are truly valued by this university, even if you do not feel it. You are truly valued by USG, and you are valued by me. Your opinion means so much to me. Even if I'm not elected, I will continue to make changes with the student body, but I fully hope I get to do that as your comptroller. I hope I can be part of a much bigger change with you. Thank you.
I would like to thank both of our Comptroller candidates for coming, and would appreciate the fact that we have a contested race in all of our major elections. So thank you so much. So with that, we're going to take a brief 5-minute break. Kamara is going to be moderating the last debate. I would like to give a huge shout out for Kamara for moderating the last debate, and I will be still here in the audience. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I'm always available by email, and yeah, thank you so much.
started on the debate. My name is Kamara again. Thank you all for coming. So we're going to start off with opening statements. Each candidate has 4 minutes allotted to speak, and we have a randomized order to determine who speaks first. Eric Mead, you're up first. You may begin when you're ready.
All right. This trustee election is about time. It's time for affordability and accountability. It's time for sustainability and transparency, and it's time for a member of the Board of Trustees that you can trust in. My name is Eric Mead, and I'm a political science major from Prospect, Connecticut. I'm currently a senator in the undergraduate student government and an active member of the UConn Club Track and Field team. As your undergrad trustee, I will fight as hard as I can against unfair and unneeded tuition hikes. There is no reason that UConn should be threatening to charge an extra $3,000 per year without first looking at what they can do to stop students from paying more. This creates an equity issue, and that it decreases the diversity of our student body, and it also makes our higher education so much less accessible to so many more people. People choose UConn because of how high quality of an education it gives for a relatively competitive price. Higher tuition will just drive more and more people away. I will also fight for sustainability and environmentally friendly infrastructure on campus. The climate crisis is one of the biggest issues that our generation will have to face. The current trustees are happy to let this issue fall to the wayside because they won't have to deal with the ramifications. This is our fight, and I want to steer the Board of Trustees in the right direction. We need the board to make a written and official pledge to carbon neutrality by 2030 and zero carbon by 2040. Further, we demand centralization of the school's sustainability initiatives under a senior administrator to have a more streamlined process when it comes to making these types of decisions. By no means am I an expert on this, and that's why I will also continue to attend the meetings of environmental organizations committed to sustainability on campus and advocate for their goals and ideas. Another core tenet of mine is transparency. Not only will I talk to and meet anyone who reaches out, but I will also maintain my Instagram account with weekly updates about what I'm doing for you. And I will always be responsive to student concerns and needs. I will be a trustee for all campuses. The majority of students attend the Storrs campus, but that doesn't mean that the regional students aren't Huskies too. I've reached out to student leaders at every campus to have meaningful discussions about what needs to be done. While we're building hockey rinks and even more residence halls here, the buildings on our other campuses are falling apart, and their needs are going unmet. We are one UConn, and the Board of Trustees needs to start acting like it. Lastly, and very importantly, is accountability. Like I said earlier, this election is about time, and several of my opponents on this stage do not have enough time to fulfill the 2-year term. Yes, you heard me correctly. The next trustee will serve until June of 2025, and I'm the only person on this stage who graduates in 2026. Being able to serve the full term allows me to hold the board to their long-term promises because I will still be here. I want to ensure that UConn makes progress on its promises, and I want to see movement on what matters to us. I won't claim to be a perfect candidate, and that's because I'm not. But what I will do is give you my guarantee, the Eric Mead guarantee, that I will wake up every day and go to sleep every night trying to do what is best for UConn undergrads and what is best for UConn. And that's because as trustee, I will always be on the clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Leo Gold, you're up next. You may begin when ready.
Hello, Huskies. I would like to begin by thanking everyone, my fellow candidates here, those in the audience, and those watching at home, for coming here at this late hour as we look to determine the best representative for all of UConn students beyond the Board of Trustees. My name is Leo Gold. I'm an electrical and computer engineering student here at UConn, and I'm running to be your next student trustee. All Huskies deserve a spot at the table. With your help, I will join the Board of Trustees and be your voice, driving positive change in the university. As student trustee, my goal is to focus on real issues that students have identified to be the most pressing for them, such as student safety everywhere, spending smarter, and streamlining club funding. Then work to develop a pathway for progress into the future. As an engineer at UConn, I have learned to identify and define the issues facing our community, design realistic and achievable solutions, and deliver tangible results. This is what I promise to do as student trustee. Let's first dive into student safety. The university has an obligation to ensure safety wherever students are together, both on and off campus. The university likes to say, protect the pack. However, at the start of last semester, over half of the blue lights here in stores were not functional. Many accessibility services, such as the automatic handicap doors across campus, do not work or are in disrepair. Hartford students are not comfortable walking from their campus to the parking garage after their shuttle was taken away last year. Every single UConn student has the right to feel safe everywhere. So how will we pay for these improvements? By spending smarter. The university has a lot of work to do to optimize spending and prepare for potential budget cuts that we've been recently hearing about. We can find ways to reduce spending while also finding ways to raise more capital through investors and donations. By putting more money into student services, such as cultural centers, where students feel safe and connected, and dining services to increase hours, we can increase the value of this university to students. The better individual that UConn creates, the more likely they are to bring value back to the university. It is paramount that UConn invest in students while refusing to unnecessarily increase tuition. Lastly, I'd like to address club funding, since I know this is a topic that impacts so many of us. The current club funding system is slow, complex, and unreliable. Through my position as Deputy Chief Justice in USG, I have noticed that the crux of this issue is with university policies and procurement. As Ben mentioned in his Comptroller debate, we have come a long way. However, I plan to tackle this problem from the administration side. I can find ways of optimizing these procedures, specifically for student club funding, and most importantly, establish a line of communication between procurement and the entity responsible for our funding, like USG and stores. This way, policy changes are known, and organizations are not blindsided when their funding is denied with less than a week before an event. This is something that needs to happen. My number one goal is to be the voice of all UConn students across all campuses, and to ensure we all get the most out of our tuition and experience as possible. Together, we can make a real difference at UConn that can last for generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Anya Mehta, you are up next. You may begin when ready.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Scotiagook, Golden Hill Pagusset, Nipmuc, and Lenape peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. I thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. My name is Anya Mehta. I use any pronouns, and I'm so excited to be in front of you all today, and I'd like to thank you all for staying this long and for our final part of the debate tonight. I'm a health policy major, and I'm working towards my master's in public administration through UConn's Fast Track program. So first, I have a question for you all. Can you raise your hand if you can name 3 members on the Board of Trustees? Want to look around? How many of you can name maybe 2? 1? Can any of you tell me what the Board of Trustees does? Okay, so throughout my time working to get on the ballot and campaigning for this position, I've noticed a problem. The Board of Trustees is an enigmatic and unattainable group. They have total control to make decisions with our money without our input. Having 1 graduate and 1 undergraduate on a board of 21 members is unacceptable. Should I become your trustee, I would advocate for Bill 3655, which would increase the number of students on the board, allowing us greater negotiating power so we can get more done. Nonetheless, only one of us sitting here tonight will end up being appointed for the coming year. Which, just side note, I actually will be at UConn until 2025, but just in the master school. So let me tell you now why I believe you should vote for me. As a queer woman of color, I can bring a perspective to the board that has not been present in years. I have a deep understanding of the structural barriers present at UConn, which will require a strong advocate to deconstruct. This includes discriminatory policies that disproportionately impact low-income and first-generation students. In addition, I have studied in depth how policy affects student outcomes. I've been really fortunate to be a research assistant at UConn's Institution for Collaboration on Health Intervention and Policy, where I have learned how adverse student experiences negatively impact academic outcomes. I know that as your student trustee, I will ensure the board takes steps to put students first, rather than be a self-serving collusion for corporations that donate to the university. So my platform is three-pronged. First, shared governance. This means regional campus representation, marginalized community representation, and overall student body representation. Second, sustainability. Ensuring that the board supports the university's goal of being a beacon of progress in the environmental movement and leaders in sustainability. I believe that all future buildings that are constructed on campus should be LEED certified, with the goal of being platinum certified, if not gold. Sorry, other way around. Gold certified, if not platinum. LEED is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is a certification that buildings can obtain and is a sticker of how sustainable it will be. And speaking of infrastructure, my third point is housing reinvestment. It is completely unacceptable that UConn students are paying thousands of dollars every semester to live in mold-infested dorms with rusty water coming out of their pipes. Unhealthy living conditions are proven to adversely impact mental health and academic outcomes, not to mention a person's long-term health. It is despicable that the university has not addressed the issues in North and Northwest until very recently. But that's not the only issue. It is also a huge problem that our dorm buildings are not—
Time is up, I'm sorry.
ADA accessible. I'm sorry. Okay, Anya's on your side.
Thank you, Anya. John Durham, you're up next. You may begin when ready.
Thank you so much. My fellow Huskies, my fellow candidates and guests, both in the audience and at home watching, I wanted to start by saying that I'm proud to be a Husky. I know that when I finish my journey here, I will be proud to say that I went to the University of Connecticut, and I am here to tell you today that I have the esteemed privilege of being a Husky since I first received my acceptance letter in 2018. I know that was a long time ago. It has been an incredible yet difficult journey to get to where I am today. A 23-year-old veteran studying political science and pursuing a master's of public administration. I started my UConn career as a non-traditional student, not only because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but because I had recently returned home from an Army deployment. I've been serving the state of Connecticut within the Army National Guard for the past 6 years, and I hope to serve the next generation of Connecticut leaders as your undergraduate student trustee. In my time here at UConn, I have served as the Veteran Student Organization President, Student Activities Involvement Ambassador, Con Men a cappella, Treasurer and President, Veterans Affairs Work Study, and for a short period of time, I was the USG Veterans Senator. I've enjoyed working with these smaller communities within UConn, and I really want to take this opportunity to take my service to the next level and represent all of you on the Board of Trustees. And what I really want to do with that is I want to use my diverse network of student leaders to represent you through all those communities that I put myself in, through the Involvement Ambassador, working with student leaders across the campus, across organizations, through Leadership Legacy, a cohort of diverse leaders that get together and share their concerns, ideas, and perspectives. Everyone in this room has a different path, a different past, and a different perspective. My promise to you as your trustee is that I will represent all of the voices from every corner of UConn, whether you're at Stores or one of the regional campuses, whether you play soccer or lacrosse, whether you sing or work in a lab, no more. And now it is more important than ever for us to work together as one community to leave UConn better than we found it. As your trustee, I will be there for you, I will fight for you, and I will make UConn to be the best that it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We're going to move into questions. I've received a list of pre-submitted questions from the student body, and I'll read them out loud for candidates to answer. And we'll go in the order that you gave your opening statements. What is your vision for the undergraduate trustee role, and what are some of the immediate things you're planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
All right. So my vision for the role is that I want to be accessible. I want to be here for you. I live on campus. I'm on multiple clubs. I'm applying to be an RA. I'm in the class right now to become a unit facilitator. So I'm here, I'm around, and I will continue to be here and around because I'll be here for the next 4 years. As for immediate steps, I think first and foremost is fighting the tuition hikes. That has been on a lot of people's minds recently. We had Save UConn, and it's continuing to be in the papers, both outside of UConn and inside of UConn, the daily campus. And I know that it's weighing heavily on a lot of people because they don't know whether or not UConn will continue to be affordable for them. So one of the very first things I want to do is combat the tuition hikes as forcefully as possible. Thank you.
What is your vision for the undergraduate trustee role, and what are some of the immediate things you're planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
So I'd like to begin with my vision. So I think we can all acknowledge that one person does not know everything. So I hope that every student that sees an issue on campus will come to me and let me know so that we can attack it together. However, this is not the end. I plan to hold roundtable discussions at every campus at least once before every Board of Trustee meeting to learn about the issues facing all of us and develop a plan of action to address all of our concerns. I think that the student trustees should represent all students and what they believe in. So I'm going to work very hard to hear from all of you and find out what you see as issues with the university and work to develop actionable solutions for these. In terms of what I want to address this coming year, I've already outlined my plan. However, I believe the first thing that I'm going to attack in this role is going to be club funding. This is something that is actionable, it's something we can get done, and I've already identified the places for where we can attack it. So I would like to see your support in that initiative. Thank you.
I can repeat it. What is your vision for the undergraduate trustee role, and what are some of the immediate things you're planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
So my corny tagline is Anya's on your side. So my vision is to be on your side and to advocate for what you want. Throughout the past couple weeks, I've been having discussions with UConn students from across the state at all campuses, in all departments, in the cultural centers, and learning what you guys want to see changed. And I feel that my platform really represents that. So one of my immediate goals is to have greater student representation on the Board of Trustees. So the way that the board works is that there's a large public meeting that happens. It just happened this past yesterday morning. And a lot of people do not go to these meetings. They're open to the public and you can make public comment, and yet most students don't even know that they're allowed to attend. In addition to that, there are subcommittee meetings that meet and as well, and because of the number of committee meetings versus only the 2 student representatives, there's often decisions being made without any student representation at all, which is completely unacceptable. So what needs to happen immediately is that there needs to be students that I will collaborate with that are able to report to the students what is going on behind closed doors, so that there's nothing that the students are unaware of that the university can do with our money that we don't know about. Thank you.
Oh, just a side note, when I do this, still have some time to talk, so if you want to take the rest of your 30 seconds, you can.
I can see.
Okay. I'll repeat the question. What is your vision for the undergraduate trustee role, and what are some of the immediate things you're planning to accomplish this upcoming year?
So really what I see as the Board of Trustees is I see right now, it's a closed off group. They are making some of the biggest decisions here at UConn. One of the things that I really want to bring to that table is transparency between the board and the student body. Whether that is within making important tuition decisions, fee decisions, anything, allocating funding towards resources. I want to make sure that no student is left in the dark when it comes to these issues, when it comes to the resources that they have access to. And really how we can start doing that is by defining the resources that we have already. Making sure that students know what they have access to now. Too many times, we see it all the time. People don't know what the Q Center is. People don't know what the W Center is. They don't know where to find their center. They don't know where to find the Rainbow Center. The people don't know these things. And I think that one of the first things and one of the most important things we can do for these students is to lead them where they need to go. Make sure, we can't force somebody to walk through a door and report whether it's with they're a victim of sexual violence or they need help and support with mental health, but we can make the door with glowing and bright signs and make sure that students know where to go to get the help that they need. And I think by expanding these the training required for students to become executive leaders of student organizations, by creating a discussion between not only the Board of Trustees and these student leaders, but between all the departments that put together all of these resources for students, making sure that we spread all that information across the entire campus. I think the best way to do that is through the student organizations. We have over 700 organizations just here alone, and I think that through putting funding into training for those student leaders and making sure that all of our students are informed first and foremost is my vision.
Thank you. The next question is, in what ways do you feel as though you are qualified to be in the role of trustee?
So like I said earlier, I'm currently in USG as a senator, and all the things that I've outlined in my campaign, getting access for club sports to some of the university's facilities, I'm on club track, so I'm involved in that already. Environmental and sustainability initiatives on campus. I've been attending fossil fuel-free UConn meetings. Just stuff like that. I've been involved around campus. I'm already interested in a lot of these things, and it is just, I already advocate for students in USG, and going to the Board of Trustees would be just another step up in that. It would just be a way for me to do that more widely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll repeat the question. In what ways do you feel as though you are qualified to be in the role of trustee?
So, as some of you know, I'm currently the Deputy Chief Justice in USG. This role has exposed me to a lot of the funding policies and procedures on the university side that hold up club funding. So that's where I've been able to identify actionable items that I'll be able to take to improve that process. In addition, through this role, I've had exposure to multiple members of administration and had conversations with them, learned how they act, learned how they speak, learned how to interact with them. So I believe that I am in a unique position to better interact with them and get our points across and lead to positive change. In addition, I'm very involved in the UConn community. I have started a couple organizations, namely Frost Robotics, the premier combat robotics organization at UConn, as well as being involved in organizations such as UConn Model UN, where I've been able to practice skills about like public speaking, where I can better advocate for us as students. So I believe that through my leadership roles on campus, through my interaction with UConn administration, I'm in a unique position to better advocate for us as students, take in our input, and deliver actionable results.
Thank you. in what ways do you feel as though you are qualified to be in the role of trustee?
So I'm hearing a lot of discussion about USG, and while I myself am also in USG, I hold two roles. USG funding and the undergraduate student government plays a very different role than what the student trustee would be doing. And working within the spaces of USG would certainly be a goal of mine, to collaborate with all of the student governments across campuses. However, the system is completely different at Storrs USG with funding than it is for regional campuses. And secondly, it's more of a student government facing issue. It's not really something that the student trustee would have a lot of input or say in, unless they were heavily collaborating with USG, which is not really what I wouldn't really be interested in focusing on club funding. I have a very large understanding of the corporate contracts between the university and corporations such as Eversource or Coca-Cola, things that, you know, are behind the scenes that a lot of students don't know has a huge impact on things as simple as the food that we eat. I have a pretty great political presence at the administration level, and I've been working with senators and representatives at the state level to do and make change at UConn. Not only that, but in my education, I am learning about public policy and public administration and how those things can impact educational outcomes for students. I have taken economic policy classes at the graduate level, and this will allow me to properly distribute the money that you are actually putting in my hands. By being a member of the Board of Trustees, you are allowing me to make decisions with your money. And I feel like you should choose the person who has a great understanding of financial and economic policy. Thank you.
I'll repeat the question. In what ways do you feel as though you are qualified to be in the role of trustee?
Yeah, so really, you know, I go back to when I first started at UConn, which I started at the Avery Point campus. I came from a regional campus. I worked hard there and earned my spot here at Storrs, really. And I think that, you know, kind of having that first experience at UConn, being able to understand the different challenges of other campuses and be able to connect with regional students, I really came to UConn with just a fire to really serve people. And I think that started back when I joined the National Guard. I wanted to serve not only federally, but that's why I chose the Connecticut Army National Guard. So that way I could do things like, during COVID, build test kits, build overfull hospitals, go out into the community and work for people. And I think coming to UConn, bringing that with me, joining the Veteran Student Organization and advocating for a very small population at UConn, just between 300 to 400 students, but with some pretty major issues. We see a lot of people that come in with post-traumatic stress disorder and a lot of other issues. They're older, they're paying bills, they have kids, they're coming to school at a different time. And I think since COVID-19, we're seeing more non-traditional students come to UConn. We're seeing older students, and I think it's important to not only represent the more traditional students here, but also these other communities. And I think that by going from a position where I can advocate for veteran students, moving into student activities to work with student leaders, facilitate training to teach leaders how to run student organizations, how to manage conflict, and then as well, along with my schooling, not only doing political science, but I'm also in a fast track program for a master's in public administration, where, Anya, where we're looking at some pretty important things when it comes to policy, when it comes to decision making at a corporate scale. Like these are things that are extremely important, and they're part of what it is going to require to be on the Board of Trustees. And I think through...
Sorry, your time's up.
Yep, okay, thank you.
The next question question is, what policy or issue that you're running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it?
Not to beat a dead horse, but again, tuition hikes, it's the most pressing matter on students' minds, and it affects everyone, it affects all of us. But I already said that. So another really important thing to me is sustainability. I know there's a lot of student advocates on the campus who have been working really hard at this for a really long time, namely Chase Mack, who is here today in the audience. Thank you, Chase. But it has far-reaching effects, and the Board of Trustees needs to commit to fixing these problems on our campus because it will just be better for the health of the university and the students as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. What policy or issue are you running on that is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it?
I would like to also reiterate that I believe the tuition hikes are a legitimate issue that we should be concerned about. However, that is something that we definitely have to address. However, my global focus after that tuition hike issue is to focus on safety. So no student at UConn should feel unsafe on campus, at any campus. We need to protect the pack, as UConn says. However, the UConn administration has not been doing an excellent job of that in recent years. I know that in the Hartford campus, there was a shuttle that used to bring their students from their main campus to their garage at night. However, recently they've gotten rid of that shuttle, like within the past year, and now the students have to walk in the dark in downtown Hartford, which isn't necessarily the safest at night. So I think that is something that we definitely need to address. In Stanford, there's also an issue where there's no security in their building, and there's random people that come in and sometimes haggle them and stuff like that. So they are really asking for there to just be some type of check-in at the front of their building, some type of way to prove that you're affiliated with the university to go in. So I'd be working with those people to try to get these things to make the students feel safe. In addition, in stores, as I mentioned before, there has been a blue light problem throughout the years at this university. So just looking to audit that, looking to see what we can make sure that they are functional, and if they're not, what we can do to fix it. There's no reason that with a budget close to $1 billion, UConn cannot have functional blue lights on campus. We just really need to look into those issues, look into the accessibility issues, and also look into just pedestrian safety on campus. There's some areas of campus with crosswalks that can be unsafe to cross at times, no lights on them, especially just off campus at the stores. So I think we just need to look into these issues, work with facilities to find solutions, and deliver results.
Thank you. What policy or issue that you're running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it?
In my platform, I would say that shared governance is the most important to me. I think it's important that I am not the only student voice that the Board of Trustees hears. And while I promise to tirelessly work for you all and advocate for your voice, I want you to be able to speak for yourselves. I want you to be comfortable going up to the CEO of Travelers or to the governor of Connecticut and speak your mind and tell them how you want them to use your money. Beyond that, shared governance also means information accessibility. I promise that I will be posting on my social media, which if you follow me, you know I post an annoyingly amount on my social media, keeping up with people through text and email. I've literally been talking to everyone that I possibly can who will, meet me for a cup of coffee and talk about issues that matters to them and learn what I can do to become a better trustee for them. And just so you know, the trustee actually has an office, the student trustee has an office in the SOC, and I can promise you will always find me there, and I will always be willing to hear what you have to say. So that's my answer to the question, and I do just want to point out that, Leo, I think you made some really great points about safety. However, I think we should steer clear from the idea that a heavy police presence means safety, I believe that we should defund UCPD. Thank you.
What policy or issue that you're running on is most important to you, and how do you plan to solve it?
Thank you very much. And I think really when it comes down to what I really want to do as your student trustee is it's about this transparency between the board and the student body. One of the things that I really want to work on and I really want to start with is I want to take what Mason Holland and a great group of people did last year with the task force for combating sexual violence, and I want to take those recommendations, I want to bring them to the board, and I want to make sure that UConn incorporates those, and by way of defining our resources. It comes back to defining our resources. I agree, accessible education is very important, and tuition increases, tuition, fees, these sorts of things, they're not absent from my mind. I want everyone to know that. They are there, and we are dealing with the budget right now. We are speaking up. We are asking for more funding, and I will work with the Board of Trustees to make sure that if there are any increases, they are minimal, if they can come. But I think what I can do as student trustee is I can focus on the resources available to students. I can make sure that students are informed. I can make sure that we learn from the past leaders of whether it's within USG, within our communities. We can bring in those perspectives to the Board of Trustees to make sure that we are putting our efforts towards the issues and the things that we can solve.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our questions for these candidates. Thank you. And now we move on to closing statements, and you each have 4 minutes to speak. We'll keep the same order as opening statements. So, Eric, you may begin on the right.
I'm going to keep this really short. Thank you guys all for being here and for staying, guys, the whole time. I'm more than proud to say that I'm a Husky, but it's important to never be complacent. UConn is a top-tier research institution with students that deserve top-tier representation, and they deserve it right now. A vote for Eric Mead for trustee is a vote for consistency. It's a vote for affordability, accountability, sustainability, transparency, and it's a vote for change. It's a vote for more time. UConn has a need for me. And the clock is ticking, folks. So thank you all for being here, and please make sure to vote.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to reiterate that my #1 priority is the students of UConn. That is why I have chosen to first tackle issues that are achievable, pragmatic, and currently impact students today. I plan to make use of every minute I am on the board to solving these issues and improving the UConn community. I plan to use my past 2.5 years here to better solve these issues and drive change. This can be by improving safety on campuses, by reinstating shuttles in Hartford, adding security to the buildings in Stanford, and conducting an audit with UConn facilities to ensure our current devices, namely blue lights, are operational. The university has an obligation to protect the past and ensure safety wherever us Huskies are together, both on and off campus. My goal is that every student feels safe and protected at every one of our campuses. We need to improve club funding by working with Lloyd Blanchard, the CFO, as well as members of the procurement office to improve policies and increase communication between the purchasing departments and the student governments making these requests. Never again do I want to see an organization put in weeks and weeks of work and be prevented from running an event because of a miscommunication between procurement and USG. My goal is a funding system that is fast, simple, and reliable at the administrative level to help student governments across UConn deliver money to the students so that they can run programs that help us all. Realistically, these improvements will cost money. However, we can raise that money while not increasing tuition by spending smarter and raising more capital through investors and donations. My goal is to increase spending to programs and initiatives that benefit students without an increase in tuition, something that is achievable and will benefit everyone. While I've chosen now to focus on ensuring student safety everywhere, spending smarter, and streamlining club funding, this is not the end. As I mentioned before, I plan to hold roundtable discussions at every campus, at least once before every Board of Trustee meeting, and to learn about the issues facing all of us and develop a plan to address all of your concerns. I alone cannot know everything that is going on in this university, and I hope that every student that sees an issue on campus will let me know so that we can attack it together. Feel free to reach out to me over email, gold@uconn.edu, or come see me after this debate, or send me a message on Instagram, and I'll respond to you, and we'll see what we can do together. As an engineer, I will go at everything brought to me with the same three-step process. Identify and define the issue, design realistic and achievable solutions, and deliver tangible results. This is what I promise to do as student trustee. On February 28th at noon, I charge everyone to go for gold and vote for me, Leo Gold, for student trustee. Together, we can make a real difference at UConn that can last for generations. Thank you for coming.
I think from what we've seen here today that we have 4 very competitive candidates up here. But I wholeheartedly believe that I am the best person to represent you all on the Board of Trustees. I've been to the regional campuses to meet all UConn students and connected with their respective student leaders to learn more about what matters to them. I was actually at Waterbury and Stamford today to talk to students, and I was at Hartford earlier this week. Avery Point, I'm coming for you. Of leaders across the state to write a bill that will require UConn and other public higher education institutions to provide access to reproductive health care for students. This is just one of the tangible projects I've been working on to improve our university for students. In addition, I have fostered connections with those who have political and financial leverage and who are willing to work with me to advocate for the student body. I am confident that I will get the Board of Trustees to work for students. I know that the public eye is watching the Board of Trustees right now, and #SaveUConn has gained a lot of traction, a lot of support, and a lot of criticism. Everyone wants to see change, but what that will look like is dependent on who sits on the board. If you want to keep money in student-facing programs, defund UCPD, avoid tuition increases, then vote for Anya. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me, either come up to me now, whenever you see me on campus, or on my Instagram. It's Anya Represents with 2 A's at the beginning. And don't forget, Anya's on your side!
Let's go, Anya!
I want to first thank Chief Justice Jack Romine for inviting me to this debate. As I am external to USG, I also want to thank USG for your guys' continued efforts for students, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. I want to thank UConn for providing a challenging and rewarding educational experience so far, and most importantly, I want to thank all of you, the Huskies, for not only coming out to hear these great candidates, but for the desire to be involved on campus and fight for the college experience you all deserve. Together, by embracing the diverse journeys we're all on, I believe we can make a real difference, not only for current students, but for the future. After all, we are the future. I encourage each of you to get out and vote next Tuesday, starting at noon. Thank you, and I look forward to supporting and advocating for all of you.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes our debate for the undergraduate trustee position. Thank you all for your interest in the role and your fierce advocacy.